back again to tell you more about term limits and how important it is. My name is Linn, and I'm heading up the campaign in the state of Maine for congressional term limits, which I think is really the single most important thing that all of you can get behind. You know, there is an Article 5 in our Constitution that allows the states to bypass Congress. So the real question is, do you want to keep politicians in Washington as long as they want to stay, or should we limit their terms? Today, the president has 8 years, and we feel people in Congress need to limit their terms also. Today with us is Nick Tomboulides, and he's the executive director for U.S. Term Limits out of Washington, D.C. So Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Why don't you share with the group here, why do you feel that the campaign is so important for term limits in Congress?
Sure. Well, the term limits campaign is immensely important because term limits is not just the most bipartisan issue in our country, it's also the most popular political issue in our country. Term limits has 70 to 80% support with Republicans, Democrats, and independents, but it's still not the law of the land because career politicians in Congress refuse to take action on it. So I think it's very important that the people are sovereign in our country, that the people decide how our government works. And when the people say we don't want career politicians, we want term limits, that should be the law of our land. So this is very important.
Absolutely. And today, there is no other subject that cuts across so many borders as term limits. You can have Republicans supporting term limits, Democrats, independents, pro-life, pro-choice. Again, the gamut cuts across all borders. So why don't we have term limits in Congress today? It's not a matter of lack of desire, because everybody watching this statistically wants term limits, or at least, in my opinion, upwards of 90% everybody watching this right now, but why don't we have it? And so what we really need is the action step from the people. Right. So why don't you share with our audience today, what is the action step that we need to take?
Sure. Well, the founding fathers of our country were brilliant. Even in 1787, they knew that there would come a time when the Congress refused to do what was right, and the people needed a safety valve to go around Congress and achieve things like term limits that the Congress refused to do. So the founders created something in our Constitution called the Article 5 Convention. And using this process, we the people can go into our state legislatures, ask our state legislators to pass resolutions for a congressional term limits convention. And once 34 states have passed those resolutions, the states can collaborate and meet and propose a term limits amendment, and that amendment can go back to the states to become part of the Constitution. So you do an end run around Congress, you get that self-interest component out of the way, and you finally deliver for the people the term limits that they always wanted.
And this is something, as I'm heading this up in the state of Maine, we need to get active and get this into our legislature to bring it up. They'll pass it, but they have to hear from we the people. So check out maxtermlimits.com. And we're really putting forth a march, but we need the people to demand from all our representatives in the state that we want and we demand congressional term limits.
Right.
And it's in our, that's the way the states can act. It's the only part of the Constitution, it's the only way that the people in the states can bypass Congress. Congress has all the power, and they've talked about passing it, but in my opinion, I don't know how you feel, they're never gonna pass it. Because they're careerists, they're self-serving, and it's time for them to go, both Republicans and Democrats. And it's we the people that need to take back charge of the original document, which points out we're supposed to have the power. They're supposed to be serving us. And I don't know about you people watching today, but do you really think all the representatives in Washington are really representing you, or are they interested in re-election at all costs? I think it's most definitely re-election.
Politicians go to Washington without question. They have good intentions, and then after a certain amount of time, they fall in bed with the lobbyists and the special interests, and it becomes less about public service and more about feathering their own nests, building those empires, constantly building power in Washington, D.C., and the only way to break that cycle is with term limits. With term limits, there are two major benefits. You get the career politicians out, and you get fresh faces, fresh voices, and new ideas in.
It's about time.
Our country needs fresh ideas desperately.
Yeah, and I live in Maine. I live in Bar Harbor. I'm a Maine resident. And as I said earlier, I'm heading up the campaign in Maine. Need your help. Go to our website, maxtermlimits.com, and let's get behind this resolution, and let's make it the law of the land. Any last things you'd like to share with our viewers?
I think the only thing that I would like to share at this point is just to remember that we, the people, are the real rulers of this country.
Right.
We are the career politicians' employers, and we can instruct them on what to do. And so in this case, get into the State House, go to the Capitol and tell your Maine state legislators to pass the Term Limits Convention single issue resolution for this effort.
Yeah. And as I said, feel free to contact us. We're here. We want to hear from you. And also keep in mind, this has been one of the most interesting political years with now Donald Trump as president. And so for those of you listening, you're either like Trump or you don't. You either like him or you don't. But irrelevant of that, there is no one man or one person who's going to make America great again. Okay? And even if you're a Trump supporter, eventually he's going to be out. And then what do we have back? And if you're not a Trump supporter, there is a golden opportunity to take advantage of this moment here, because we've created such a stir with the American people. And even though Donald Trump has said before the campaign he would support term limits, he might come out and say it again. He hasn't since. I haven't seen him talk about it. But irrelevant from that, I think there's a golden opportunity with him in office and talking about it for us to carry the ball over the finish line, so to say, and really come together, unite together for a common cause of political reform through congressional term limits. So it's a nonpartisan issue. Let's get behind the charge for term limits, and let's get these career politicians the heck out of Washington. So hopefully you'll join us, maxtermlimits.com. We'll talk to you next time.